probably one of the most unpracticed scripture in the whole Bible. The James 5:16 is probably the most unpracticed scripture in the whole Bible. Because it's easy. We go, God, why can't I just confess it to you and it's done with? You're the one that forgives. Yes, that's very true. But do you know why you have to confess to one another? Because it requires accountability. See, when you confess to God, your tendency is this: God's going to forgive me, then I'm going to do it again. Be honest, I've been there. Okay, I know how that is. When I confess my sins to God and I don't confess it to another person, what happens is there's no accountability, and that's why we need to confess it to another person. And this talk about forgiveness is so powerful, guys, because if you want to learn, if anything, a person who is guiltful, if anything, the only way to get rid of all those guilt is to understand forgiveness. All of us have done things in our past that we wish if we could take it back, we want to. But the point is, you can't. You can't go back in time and take it back. What you can do right now is change the way you think. Is do something about it. Many people just end up wallowing in their guilt. Many people just end up justifying their guilt. And this is when drama comes. Because when you begin to justify your guilt, when you begin to just kind of, try to escape guilt, what happens is when you try to escape guilt, you begin to put on masks. Not only you begin to put on masks, but you begin to develop this control mechanism, if you want to call it. Because you're trying to push aside that pain. And how you control that pain, we talked about it even in session 1. A lot of us try to control pain by putting on masks, by pretending to be someone that we're not. Sometimes you put on a mask, sometimes you hide your pain by doing what? By controlling other people. By manipulating other people, by blaming other people, so that you can feel better about yourself. You do things to other people, because I've been hurt, so therefore I need to hurt other people. I remember that was one of my reasoning, guys. Before I was married, before God taught me anything about the value of what it means to be a man, before all that stuff, I was messed up myself. And growing up with so many guilts from so many different things. I came from a pretty abusive home. Half Asian mom and dad. And they're if you have Indonesian mom and dad, for sure they're gonna beat you. They don't just send you to your room; they will beat you. That's the kind of parents that I had. My parents used to beat me all the time, but a lot of the beating, however, is unhealthy. There's ways to spank your children, to discipline your children, but the way they did it was a little too extreme, and that caused a whole different problem on itself. And I don't see an example from my mom and dad in their marriage life, in their relationship. And then I start going out and I look at my uncle. My uncle was probably the coolest person I've ever met, at least at that time, because, he was a person who comes home with different girls every week, so I looked up to him as Superman, I was like, man, my uncle's a pimp, so when I grow up, I want to be like my uncle, and because that's what I thought, what I defined was cool. And to cover up my own guilt, so I go, okay, I'm gonna copy that. That's what I think is right, and I continue, and I move on from girls to girls to girls to girls to girls, looking for that. How should I call that? It's funny, trying to get rid of guilt. You know what I mean? So and girls do this too. This is my thing. Girls do it too. Before they can cheat on me, I better cheat on them. Law of the jungle, man. They either eat me or I eat them. I don't know about you, but I'd rather be on the top of the food chain. And that's why I got big. And that was always been my thing. And until I learned to deal with the guilt, until I learned to accept my fault, guys, that was probably the most awesome thing that you can ever do, is accept responsibility for your own faults. To be able to come to God and say, look, Lord, I messed up. Yes, I did those things. It's not because of my parents. It's not because of somebody else. It's not because my neighbor. It's not because my pet chihuahua. It's because of me. It's my fault. I take responsibility. This sin has been going around since day one, guys, since Adam and Eve. When God came up to Adam, goes, where'd you go? Why are you hiding? Lord, let me tell you something. It's the woman that you've given me. We played a blame game. And then you know what happened? The woman, Eve, the woman, caught the trend. Lord, it's not me, it's the snake. It's that snake that lied to me, and then the snake, and God turned to the snake, and the snake said, I did it. So who's better here? The snake. The snake accepted responsibility. Tell your neighbors, I'm better than the snake. The snake is the one that accepts responsibility. Many people, it doesn't matter how old they are, until they learn to accept responsibility, they will never attain maturity. Because let me tell you something. Maturity is not determined by age. Maturity is determined by one's willingness to accept responsibility. You can be 15, 16-year-old, but if you're willing to accept responsibility, you're a mature person in God's eyes. But if you're still you can be 59 and still be wearing diapers, if you want to call it. If you still refuse to accept responsibility, tonight, guys, you guys have to come to a point where you say, the buck stops here. The buck stops here. I'm going to take responsibility for my issues, for my lives. If you're going to continue to blame it on other people, you're just going to go around, you're just going to be on this merry-go-around. Merry-go-round. You're just going to keep on going and going and going. And let me tell you something. By the time you know it, you're not so merry when you go around. You understand? Because you're going to see the same exact issues. It may be with different people, but you're going to find the same exact issues. And if you never deal with this guilt, you can come, let's say that, you have a bitterness in one church. You show up to one church, and you go, oh, this church is great. And then after you get to know the people, you go, they're not so great. The first few months, they're like angels. 3 months after, they're devils, all of them, I tell you. It's time to find a new church. You know what? I want to find a perfect church. Let me tell you something. If you find a perfect church, don't go there because you'll mess it up. Don't go there because you'll mess it up. Because nobody's perfect. And until you discover the problem is not in someone else, the problem is you. The problem is with you. You're not going to move on anywhere. If you cannot accept that in this stage, in this fourth step, you're not going to move on, guys. You can come on next week, and we do encourage you to come on next week too. But you gotta get this. Can I just have everybody stand with me?